Please open your Bibles with me to Joshua chapter 9. Joshua chapter 9 will, I pray, provide some teaching points this morning, and the message is entitled, Watch Those Gibeonites. And that'll make more sense, Lord willing. The Gibeonites, as we'll see in Joshua chapter 9, worked deceitfully to worm their way into the people of Israel's camp. And it'll provide for us, I believe, some teaching points. We recently were blessed to be able to go to the home conference. And one of the messages there was preached by Brother Austin. And he didn't just hit the nail on the head. He just wailed on the nail on the head over and over. And my thoughts today somewhat parallel that and reflect that and are a little bit owing to that message. Watch those Gibeonites. The context of Joshua chapter 9 is that in Joshua chapter 6, the walls of Jericho fell down. And the armies of Joshua were able to defeat Jericho entirely. Entirely. Nothing left living in Jericho. And in Joshua chapter 8, through an ambush strategy, Joshua and his armies conquer the people of Ai. And again, leave nothing alive. Total destruction, which is what the Lord had instructed Joshua to do. To all the inhabitants of the land, as you're going in to the promised land, all the current inhabitants have to be 100% eradicated. And they had, under Joshua, begun to have great success in that. Under Joshua's leadership, and of course they're following the Lord's instructions, that's exactly what they're doing. And Jericho and Ai are famous examples of that. The men of Gibeon, the people of Gibeon, saw what was going on, read the handwriting on the wall, as you say, and said, we got to do something to save our skins. So let's dive into Joshua chapter 9 and starting in verse 3, let's read the first, starting in verse 3, let's read verses 3 through 6. When the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done unto Jericho and to Ai, they did work wilily, that is, subtly, deceitfully, and went and made as if they had been ambassadors, and took old sacks upon their donkeys, and wine bottles, old and rent and bound up, and old shoes and clouded upon their feet, and old garments upon them, and all the bread of their provision was dry and moldy. And they went to Joshua unto the camp at Gilgal, and said unto him and to the men of Israel, We be come from a far country. Now therefore make ye a league with us. The people of Gibeon were within the promised land. The people of Gibeon were slated by God's instruction to be completely eradicated from Canaan. They knew that. The people of Gibeon, well, Joshua knew that was what should happen to the Gibeonites. He just didn't know these that came were Gibeonites, because they came and they entered they worked wilily. They made as if they had been ambassadors. They had old clothes and old provisions and moldy bread and wore out shoes and sacks and tired old donkeys, and they made like they had come from a far distance, and they worked themselves barely by the skin of their teeth so they wanted it to be portrayed, and came and said, "We're not from around here." Everybody from around here is supposed to be eradicated. "We're not from around here. We're from a far distance over there. And we want you to make league or a peace treaty with us." All right? So that's the scene. Joshua knows that all the inhabitants of the land are to be eradicated. The people of Gibeon knows that. They don't want to be eradicated, so they lie. They come in deceitfully, and they begin to work their way in to the people of Israel. Verse 7. The men of Israel said unto the Hivites, let me read that more accurately. The men of Israel said unto the Hivites, peradventure you dwell among us, how shall we make league with you? We're eradicating all the people that dwell among us. How shall we make league with you? At first, the people of Israel, and you can see, we'll see it a little bit, the princes, the leadership, the ruling class of Israel, Joshua being a part of that. They, at first, were leery, but they slowly, as you'll see going forward, they slowly accepted them into their camp. Verse 9, the response to that, verse 8. Verse 8. And they said unto Joshua, we are thy servants. And Joshua said unto them, who are ye? And from whence come ye? He's asking the right questions. He's got his guard up. Who are you? What's going on? We're your servants. Verse 8. As the text will come along and tell us in a little bit, they're even going to hint and indicate that they'll revere Joshua's God. We're your servants. The men of Israel asked, why should we make league of you? Right question. Verse 8, they said unto Joshua, we are thy servants. And Joshua said unto them, who are you? Where'd you come from? And the narrative will go into greater detail again, reliving how that wilily, they deceitfully, they came in to them. And now, verse 9 through 13. And they answer this question of whence came ye? And they said unto him, from a very, we want to make sure we get this, very far country. Thy servants are come because of the name of the Lord thy God. They indicate a reverence for Joshua and his God. We came a great distance. For we have heard of the fame of him and all that he did in Egypt. Interesting, they go back to Egypt, not Jericho and Ai. Not connecting those dots for Joshua. They're working very deceitfully. But all that he did in Egypt and the workings of God bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt were, of course, epic. And all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites that were beyond Jordan, to Sihon, the king of Heshbon, and to Og, king of Bashan, which was at Ashtaroth. Wherefore our elders and all the inhabitants of our country spake to us, saying, take ye victuals with you for the journey, and go that far distance to meet them, and say unto them, we are your servants. Therefore now make ye a league with us. This our bread we took hot for our provision. This was right out of the oven when we left. Now it's stale and moldy. Out of provision out of our houses on the day we came forth to go unto you. But now behold, it's dry and moldy. These bottles of wine which we filled were new, and behold, they be rent. These our garments and our shoes are become old by reason of the very long journey. They keep emphasizing that very long journey. They're working wildly to integrate themselves into the children of Israel. They're on the list of those that should have been eradicated, completely destroyed. But they don't want that. They want a peace treaty with Joshua and the people. Verse 14 is obviously going to be circled back on as a teaching point. Verse 14, the men took of their victuals and asked not at the mouth of the Lord. There was a critical flaw in the process, the vetting process of the princes of Israel. They have this group of men that want to work their way into the camp. They're destroying all that the Lord has told them to destroy, and utterly so. It would have been, their radar would have been really up, and rightly so. They begin to ask the right questions, but they ask not counsel of the Lord. In verse 15, and Joshua made peace with them and made a league or a peace treaty with them and let them live. And the princes of the congregation or the leadership of the congregation of the Israelite people swear unto them. They gave them their word. They made a covenant with them. Essentially, they made a covenant with a people group that God had said to eradicate. Verse 15, we read that. They let them live. Verse 16, it came to pass at the end of 3 days after they had made a league with them that they heard that they were their neighbors and that they dwelt among them. So after they, without any counsel of the Lord, made a league with them, 3 days later, it comes to their understanding that they're our neighbors. These people represent a people group that God has told us to completely eradicate. But now we've already made an agreement with them that we won't. And as we'll see, they were obligated to keep their agreement with them. Verses 17 and 18, and the children of Israel journeyed and came into their cities on the third day. Now their cities were Gibeon and Siphrah and Beeroth and Jirajim. And the children of Israel smote them not. This people group that God had told them to completely eradicate. They'd fenced themselves into a corner and they couldn't. And they smote them not, because the princes of the congregation had sworn unto them by the Lord God of Israel. And all the congregation murmured against the princes. The leadership took it on the chin that they had made this decision with these neighbors, albeit under false pretenses and all of those kinds of things, but nonetheless, a peace treaty with those that God had told them to eradicate. And look at chapter 10 and the first two verses. Joshua chapter 10, the first two verses. Now it came to pass when Adonizek, king of Jerusalem, heard how Joshua had taken Ai and utterly destroyed it, that he had, as he had done to Jericho and her king, so he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, that they feared greatly because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and the men thereof were mighty. The people of Gibeah, the Gibeonites, were a mighty people. They were now accepted into the lives and lifestyle of the Israelites. They shouldn't have been. They weren't supposed to be. And to make matters worse, they're not just a small little faction off over here in the corner. They're a massive, powerful, dangerous force that remain. The Gibeonites are mentioned all the way into the book of Nehemiah at the rebuilding of Jerusalem. They never went away, is my point. In Nehemiah chapter 3 and verse 7, the Gibeonites are mentioned as being integrated into the people of God all the way up into that time. They never got rid of them. This illustration provides several teaching points this morning where you and I believe, need to watch out for the Gibeonites that strive to enter into your life and mine. I want to circle back and think on some of the things. And the only way this message has any value, the only way this message has any impact on your life and mine, is if we're honest with ourselves and the Lord. As you hear messages like this, it's easy to put it off as something somebody else needs, or it's easy to say with blinders on, I'm right where I'm supposed to be, I'm doing right what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm not letting the Gibeonites in my life. But let's be sure about that. Because letting the Gibeonites in, was something they weren't supposed to do, something they did prayerlessly and carelessly. And the end result of that was that they never went away. They were always a part of the landscape from there forward. What may be trying to sneak into your life deceitfully? What might the Lord bring to your attention? And I've asked myself every one of these questions. What may be trying to sneak into your life that the Lord has convicted you about that says, I'm uncomfortable with that? You could see that the men of Israel were weary. You could see that there was a proper level of, where'd you say you were from? And there's good questions they were asking, but they didn't ask them firmly enough, and they didn't ask counsel of the Lord. But what might there be in your life or mine? Maybe it's in the realm of entertainment. Maybe it's in the realm of entertainment that the Lord has convicted, and you've hopefully listened, but sometimes we take the convicting sense of the Spirit of God upon us and we push it aside. What's in your life or mine that may be trying to sneak into your life and interweave its tentacles into your life, into your spiritual life, into your professional life, private life, family life? Is it possible that there are things in the realm of entertainment that we let into our habits and lifestyles that the Spirit of God has maybe even said, I'm uncomfortable with that? Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's a pastime that the Spirit of God has pricked you in the heart enough to say, I'm uncomfortable. And I've done it, we've all probably done it, where you take that convicting work of the Spirit and you just push it aside. Keep on pressing forward with that thing that deep in your heart you know you're uncomfortable with. The men of Israel were uncomfortable, so they started asking the right questions. They didn't go far enough. Is there a passion or a pursuit that you recognize or the Lord's brought to your mind that I'm not really comfortable with you doing that? Listen to that. If the Spirit, and it doesn't do any good to not be honest, but listen to it. Does the Spirit of God speak to your heart on any level about anything? Don't let that in. Don't pursue that hobby. Don't pursue that interest. It's not going to fit into a godly man's lifestyle or a godly woman's lifestyle. Don't let the Gibeonites get in to your life. Things that at first you were reluctant to do. Things that at first your guard was up. I don't know that this, when I do this, I'm uncomfortable. When I allow this into my home or into my thought process, or when I allow myself to go in this direction or to pursue this thing or that thing, and whatever that thing is or pursuit is. Is there something that at one time your guard was up, you're uncomfortable with it, but you wanted it. You wanted to pursue it. You even maybe knew that it might not be best, but I want to pursue it. I want to practice this. I want to participate in that. Be careful that it's not a Gibeonite trying to intertwine itself into your life. Remember how that they came and said, they came under the false pretenses that they had come from this great distance. So they misrepresented themselves. When the Gibeonites try to get into your life, they'll misrepresent themselves. They'll lie. It's only entertainment. It's not anything that's going to shape your thinking. It's just mindless entertainment. And I'm trying not to be very specific because I want the Holy Spirit to talk to each one of us. And I don't want it to be limited to the thing that I identify. But the Gibeonites came deceitfully, misrepresenting what they were. Be careful that the things that you and I, let us be careful that the things that you and I let into our lives aren't misrepresenting themselves. Innocent pastime. No problem. Doesn't alter how I think, doesn't change my priorities, no problem. Remember, the Gibeonites even said, we'll be your servants. Well, they turned out to be the servants that Joshua and company made them carriers of water, I think it was, and hewers of wood. But they still never went away, and they became a mighty people. Maybe whatever this thing, and maybe there's something that the Lord's put upon your mind just now through the course of the message. Maybe you can look back and say, this thing represented itself this way, and it promised this kind of satisfaction, this kind of fulfillment, this kind of pleasure. And so I wanted that satisfaction or fulfillment or pleasure or pastime. Maybe it promised that it would please you. Maybe it even promised that it wouldn't hinder your relationship with your God. The Gibeonites came and said, "We have a great respect for your God." Hint, subtle indication, we're good with your God. We're not here to pick a fight with your God. The Gibeonites want to get into your life and mine. They'll misrepresent themselves. They'll say that they're going to serve you. They're going to please you. And they won't hinder your relationship with your God. We respect your God. Are the Gibeonites trying to get in to your life? Remember, after Joshua asked them again who they were, they just doubled and tripled down on the lies. And they began to show the evidence of what they tried to make as proof of their truthfulness, but it was all lies. And who's the liar and the father thereof? Who's the master deceiver that would love nothing more than to sift Peter like wheat? Who's the master deceiver that works wilily all the time, day and night, to convince you and me this thing's no problem, that thing's no problem? And when many times early on in the contemplation of this thing or that thing, we know in our spirit it probably is a problem. But we want it. We know that practicing this or participating in that or allowing certain things into my home or certain things into my thought processes, we're uncomfortable with it at first, but we push it aside. Listening to the lies. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm your servant. I'm just here to give you pleasure. I'm just here to give you an escape. I'm just here to make your life more fun. All lies. Just trying to get in. Just trying to intertwine itself into your life. And don't make the mistake that they made in verse 14, at the end of it. They asked not counsel of the mouth of the Lord. Has there ever been anything in your life you intentionally didn't want to ask the Lord about because you kind of knew what the answer would be? Is there anything that the Lord brings to your mind that you wish He would quit bringing to your mind because you want to keep on doing it? Don't let the Gibeonites in. They end up being there forever. There's been things in my life I've done without praying about it. I just wanted it. I just want to do it. I just want to go in that direction. I just want to purchase this thing. Whatever it is. And I didn't pray about it mostly because I didn't want to have an answer that I didn't want. Most of the time you get that thing and you regret it. Most of the time you get that thing and you wish you never would have. Or you go in that direction of a lifestyle choice, or you pursue something, or you allow something in your life. And you didn't pray about it. Truth be told, maybe because you didn't want to hear a different answer than what you wanted to have. But that provides us a teaching point that's so relevant. And again, you got to be honest. You got to be earnest with yourself and the Lord. Otherwise, none of this makes any difference. But if you're being honest, is there anything in the Lord, in your heart that the Lord's placed there and said, that's a Gibeonite. Get rid of it. That has the potential of being a Gibeonite. Get it out of there. The Lord put this thought on I heard it somewhere, and I've repeated it. I don't know where I heard it anymore. Be careful what road you're traveling on, because you might get to where it ends up. And a lot of times where things end up aren't where we thought they were going to end up. The situation with the Gibeonites didn't end up the way Joshua thought. It ended up causing trouble for him and the princes of Israel, the leadership of Israel, ended up causing trouble because the rank and file people were upset with him for making league with with this people group that God had told him to get rid of. Because here's what could happen in your life and mine. Same thing that happened in the life of Joshua and the children of Israel. The Gibeonites present themselves, whatever thing that might be trying to interweave into your life presents itself. And based on a pallet of lies, a boatload of lies, they convince you to let themselves into your life. And you don't pray about it. I don't pray about it. I'm not trying to exclude myself from you. And we make an agreement with this thing. We make covenant with this thing. We let it live when we should have killed it. We let it live when we should have eradicated it from our lives. But now we're stuck. We feel compelled to keep it. Maybe we've spent so much money on it we can't get rid of it. Maybe it's intertwined itself into our heart so much we can't pull it out because we have so much passion for it. For whatever reason, now that we've made league with this thing, a peace treaty with it, we've left it live when we shouldn't have. We've left it in when we shouldn't have. We didn't pray about it. Now we're stuck with it. For the rest of my life, I'm stuck with this thing. Or the scars that it leaves. Many times, like Joshua in verse 16, it came to pass at the end of 3 days after they had made league with them, that they heard the truth of who they were. They knew, but they couldn't do anything about it anymore. They had sworn before the Lord. They'd made peace with him. And they were stuck there. And now they weren't going to go anywhere. They feel obligated. They feel committed. We got too much invested in, too much blood, sweat, money, tears, whatever. Too much invested in it to walk away from it now. It's intertwined itself too far. It's become too dangerous, but I can't get rid of it. This is the message Brother Austin preached, and this message is very convicting to myself. And I suspect it might be convicting to others as well. But there's so many lessons that we can learn from Joshua here in Joshua chapter 9. Don't fall for the lies of the Gibeonites. Don't resist the pricking of the Spirit of God. When the Spirit of God says, hey, get that thing out of your life. Hey, don't let that thing even into your life. hey, that's a priority that you should change in your life. That pursuing that upsets the balance of the priorities in your home. Pursuing that upsets the balance of the priorities before God. There's so many different... in my outline, almost every line has a blank spot. Because I don't want to try to identify what it is in your life. And take it to the Lord in prayer. Earnestly. Desperately. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Desperately seek the mind of God. Desperately, because it is only His opinion that matters. Desperately go before the Lord, seeking wisdom, seeking clarity, seeking to cut through the lies of the adversary. I'm no problem. I'm just here to please and serve you. I'm not even opposed to your God. Desperately take it to the Lord and say, Lord, even if there's something in my life that I've never been before convicted of, if you want it gone, lay it on my heart. And be earnest. It doesn't do any good to pray the words without meaning it. Desperate to know the mind of God, because one day you will know the mind of God as you stand before Him at the judgment seat of Christ. Desperate because I want to honor the Lord with my life. Desperate because I want to be a good testimony before others, that I may win them to Christ. Desperate because what I do affects others. Dads, what you do affects your home. Moms, what you do affects your home. Children, what you do affects your home. So we're desperate to pray about it. And say, Lord, show me the answers. Show me the Gibeonites. I want the Gibeonites out. Don't let me succumb to the lies of the Gibeonites. Don't let them get intertwined in my life so I can't get rid of them. Don't let it get into a place where it takes a big chunk of my life and now I'm stuck with it. Pray about the Gibeonites. Watch for the Gibeonites. If the Lord is bringing thoughts to your mind of an area or a pursuit or a thing or a whatever, I'm not asking you to tell anybody, but you work it out with the Lord. But listen to the Lord. Listen to His leadership. Don't make peace with the Gibeonites. Rip it out while you can, before it permanently alters your mindset or your family. Rip out the Gibeonites. Get rid of them. Make following and honoring the Lord the priority of your life. Make leading your family in the fear and admonition of the Lord the absolute priority of your life. And always, I don't care if you're 25 or 65, always be on the lookout for the Gibeonites. And look to the Lord for wisdom on how to handle them. Let's stand.